Hello, everybody. We just finished the World Superbike race. I just caught the last 5 laps and now we're recording. So, hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this tremendous weekend of sports. I mean, we had tonight Francis Ngannou beating Tyson Fury, arguably. We had an absolute banger of a Moto3 race. I mean, it was crazy good. I was awake. I have to be honest, I was not particularly eager to get out of bed, but I kind of did. And then I was awake. But then Moto 2 was a bit of a snoozer, and MotoGP was awesome again. And World Superbike was awesome too. I just caught like the last 5 or 7 laps whatsoever. But yeah, I'm here with Keelan again to discuss everything from Fury to World Superbike and put some MotoGP in between, since we're a MotoGP podcast. So, hello, Keelan. How are you doing? And did you enjoy the races?
Leo, hello again, my friend. I am doing amazingly, and hello to everybody else once again. Welcome back to the BadMotoGP podcast. We are coming to you in the aftermath of the Thailand Grand Prix, but more immediately, we're coming to you in the aftermath of the 2023 season finale of World Superbike from Jerez. It was epic. MotoGP was epic. Moto3 was epic. Moto2 was not so epic. Fury and Ngannou was the most epic event of them all, arguably, and we're here to literally break all of it down for you. So let's get straight into it.
Yeah, let's get the Fury and Gunner thing out of the way first. Did you watch it live?
Yes, I did. I'm not
Because
gonna. I'm
I
not going to go
didn't.
into how I watched it. I'm not trying to catch a case, but I did watch it live. Yes.
Yeah, because on the Zone, you can buy the pay-per-view for like 15 euros where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
And since all the YouTube boxing shit went down and like Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, I wasn't too particularly excited to see it. So no way. I mean, if it was free, I would have watched it, but no way I would have paid 15 euros for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how the undercard went. I just checked some live reports, and there were a lot of knockdowns and knockouts. So
Mm-hmm.
it seemed to be good, but it was predominantly heavyweights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I watched the highlights, and I'm kind of surprised how incredibly good Francis Ngannou can box, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first of all, a note on the card itself. The production from Saudi Arabia was incredible. It was very, very good in terms of the graphics and the show and everything, the spectacle. Absolutely top notch. Credit to the government of Saudi Arabia. No, I have not been paid to say that. That's just my honest opinion. But Jesus Christ, the scheduling sucked. There was like an hour and a half between the last undercard fight and the main event, and that was absolutely dreadful. They were filling it with so much crap in between that people were switching it off left, right, and center. But eventually we got to the fight. We got Francis Ngannou walking out with Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and Mike Tyson, which was pretty epic. Tyson Fury walking out with 100 Furies, which was interesting. And then we got to the fight, and Francis Ngannou outboxed a heavyweight champion of the world, which is one of the most insane things I think I've ever seen in all my life. Third round, Francis Ngannou knocks him down. Tyson Fury looks like he's seen Jesus, which he didn't literally, but emotionally, yes, he did. And yeah, Francis Ngannou outboxed him and realistically won and should have been given the decision. So absolutely incredible from Francis Ngannou. A real life lesson in backing yourself, back yourself and trust yourself. And this is what can come to you. You know, Francis Ngannou just went toe to toe with a heavyweight champion of the world in his first ever boxing match and outboxed him, which is incredible. Tyson Fury is an embarrassment, quite frankly. He's destroyed boxing, he's destroyed his own legacy, and yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Obviously, since I didn't watch the fight live, I can't score it. But to keep this, was it like a tight fight where it can go either way, or was it obvious that Francis should have won?
Well, there were 4 rounds that were clearly for Francis. Round 3 was a 10-8 because he got the knockdown.
Obviously.
Round 4 he won, and rounds 9 and 10 he really started pouring it on Tyson, so he clearly won those. The rest of them are pretty up in the air, so you can kind of put them between one or the other. To be fair, I mean, even if you're being generous, I had Francis winning 6 rounds to 4, and realistically, it could have been 7-3. A lot of boxing people are obviously coming out of their little caves and saying, "Oh, that's not how you score." But yes, it is how you score boxing. Francis outboxed Tyson. He landed more power punches. He controlled the action. He was the aggressor the entire fight. And realistically, and Tyson should have been deducted a point as well, by the way, for throwing an illegal elbow through the
I've
guard of
seen the replay.
Ngannou.
I've seen it, and it was slick. I mean, it was like some kind an overhand, right?
Yeah,
Like
it
an
was an
overhand, or
overhand that
was
he
it an uppercut?
it was basically like an overhand right that he threw into a Muay
Yeah.
Thai elbow. Typical, gypsy bare knuckle boxing technique, to be fair, but it was illegal and he should have been deducted a point for that as well. So realistically, no matter what way you look at it, Francis won that fight.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, even if it was 5-5, you should have given it to Francis because of the 10-8. So, but I will take a sip out of my peanut mug, and then we will get into MotoGP.
Peanut merch coming soon, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it was a Christmas gift from my girlfriend's mom.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
yeah, and regarding MotoGP, I mean, how incredibly good is Jorge Martin? During the race, I thought, okay, Jorge is controlling it from the front, but towards the end, when Brad Binder started to push, and especially after he overtook him, I thought maybe Jorge's rear tire is gone and maybe he will get eaten up by Pecco and finish in third, like again using up his rear tire. But he
Mhm.
did everything right. I mean, the overtake, I didn't see it coming from Jorge Martin to take back the lead, and the way he defended was incredible. And Brad Binder was always putting on the pressure. I mean, and Jorge Martin knew he couldn't afford to even finish second. He had to win this race because he has this huge point point gap to Pecco,
Mhm.
and it was just incredible. And when you like we said after Indonesia, if Pecco wins the championship, this will be like a defining moment of his championship. Like
Yes.
same for Jorge. If he wins the championship, this will be a defining race for Jorge and his championship because he was so utterly good. And Brad Binder is not a rider who's easy to overtake. Because he's so late on the brakes, and B, when Brad Binder is directly behind you and gets like a drive on you to brake like 2 or 3 meters later than him and still make the corner, it was incredible. Jorge Martin was defending the entire time, but managed to do it in a very smart way, where
Mm.
he like was as far as on the inside as he possibly could without sacrificing much exit speed.
Mhm.
But it was incredible. I mean, he was so good today, and like all the stakes were on the table after Bradman overtook him, and he made all the right decisions. And it's incredible how good he was over the entire weekend, but especially like in those last 5 laps when the pressure was on. Jorge Martin really delivered, and it was incredible to see. Like my heartbeat was through the roof. It was incredible how good he was.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I actually think today might have been the best Jorge Martin performance we've ever seen. Better than the 10-second leads, better than wiping everybody else off the grid. Because Jorge Martin had to deal with pressure from 2 of the best riders in this grid, and he dealt with it better than anybody I've seen. Managed the tires brilliantly, has learned from Australia, outbraked Brad Binder, which nobody does. Nobody outbreaks Brad Binder. But Jorge Martin did it, breaking 2 or 3 meters later than him, as you said, still making the apex of the corner and getting out the other side. That is an outstanding achievement on its own, and Jorge Martin managed all of it perfectly. And realistically, this kid is so freaking talented. He is so gifted at riding that motorcycle. It's not even fair. And just this weekend, he looked amazing. He won the sprint race, he won the main race. The gap is now down to 13 points. 13 points, 3 weekends of racing to go. Jorge Martin is really turning the screw here, and I am so excited for these last 3 weekends. We have got Malaysia to come, we've got the bright lights of Qatar to come, and we have got Valencia to come. Ladies and gentlemen, this script could not have been written any better. Jorge Martin is knocking on the door. Will he get
Yeah.
there? Only fate will tell.
The thing is, usually on a MotoGP race, the rear tire is extraordinarily good. So you can push more or less the entire race. Still, you have to manage in some way, but it's usually those races like Thailand, like Phillip Island, where you have to be really, or Catalonia, where you have to be really, really careful with the rear tire, and then you get those tight races and you really have to manage. You can't manage too much because then you lose, and you can't manage too little, then you lose again. So you have to find this middle ground, and it's extraordinarily difficult. And to pull it off after Phillip Island and Mandalika, where both for different reasons, Martin kind of had little mistakes which costed him too much.
Mm-hmm.
And to pull this off against a rider like Brad Binder, who's usually good towards the end of a race, a rider like Pecco, who's also usually good towards the end of a race. I mean, incredible. And to learn, I mean, you really see Jorge Martin developing. It's crazy because he was known as somebody who's like good in the beginning of a race, but then starts to fade a little bit like Jack Miller, but not as severe.
Mm-hmm.
And now it seems like he really figured everything out, and he seems to be the complete package. He can qualify again. He can win all the sprint races, obviously, and he can manage a tire over the race distance. And it's a dangerous, dangerous combination.
It's such a dangerous combination, and we actually said at the beginning of this season when sprint races were introduced, this format was built for Jorge Martin because it's half race distance. You can throw the kitchen sink at it and get some very valuable points. Jorge Martin has done that, but our question always was, can he manage the race distance? Can he stop the fading? Can he manage the tires? And today he put it all together, and that is the sign of phenomenal growth from Jorge Martin. I mean, the growth he's had from the beginning of this season to this point is exponentially good. He's gone on such leaps and bounds in his growth. It's unbelievable. It really, really is. And if Jorge Martin somehow wins this championship, he will be such a deserving champion this year because today he put it all together, and now he's got 3 more race weekends to put it all together as well. If he can finish ahead of Pecco, nobody can question it because Jorge Martin has been so goddamn good this year, and I'm so happy for him because that kid is gifted like you wouldn't believe.
And he stopped crashing. I mean,
And he stopped crashing.
Jorge always had like a tendency to crash a little bit too much.
Mm.
It's gone. And still, I want to remind everybody that Jorge Martin's manager is the most gangster person alive because he got him out of this KTM contract in 2020. Backstory for everybody who doesn't know. Apparently, Jorge Martin had a contract with KTM, which enabled him to go to KTM in MotoGP and which enabled KTM to kind of draft him into their team. But it had like a small condition, which said if KTM has X amount of points at a certain date, he will go to KTM, and if they have less, he can go elsewhere because like a performance measure. But then COVID came around, so no races were held, and obviously KTM had 0 points, as everybody did. But Jorge Martin's manager said, "Nope, you didn't get the points you told us you would get. Let's fuck off to Ducati." And first of all, absolutely gangster. Second of all, it was the best thing that happened to Jorge Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy, crazy.
It is crazy. It absolutely is. And Jorge's manager is such a G for doing that. Going to KTM saying, I don't care. You ain't got the points. We're out of here. And that Ducati just fits him like a glove. It fits him so perfectly. And you really do have to wonder. And I know this isn't a fair comparison because Enea Bastianini's been pretty badly injured and beat up. You do have to wonder, is Paolo Ciabatti, Davide Tardozzi, and the crew, are they looking at Jorge Martin wondering if they made the wrong decision? Did they back the wrong horse? Should Jorge Martin be wearing Ducati red? And I think Jorge Martin has done such an amazing job of proving everybody wrong this year. I mean, we knew he would be good, but he's exceeded even our expectations of being good and still being in the title race 3 weekends away from the end. I thought he would have faded 4 or 5 weeks ago, but he's still here. And even if Jorge Martin doesn't win the title this year, he's already won because he's proven how good he is, and he's proven that he is one of the very, very top 1% in the world. And 2024 is going to be such an exciting year for Jorge Martin.
Especially after last year. I mean, everybody
Yes.
was talking about Enea Bastianini versus Pecco, and Enea has his own issues. But for whatever reason, Jorge Martin used this as the perfect fuel to to compete for a world championship on a satellite team. And I don't necessarily know if Ducati made the wrong decision because they have still three Ducatis fighting for the championship mathematically. So I don't know if they really made a wrong decision here, but I think that it's gonna be very, very difficult for Pecco to keep up with Jorge Martin's pace.
Mm.
But I think it will be equally difficult for Jorge Martin to keep up with Pecco's consistency. I know it
Mm.
might sound ridiculous, Pecco and consistency in one sentence, but again, when the pressure is on, Pecco delivers, and he did deliver today. It
Yeah,
was
he did.
incredible when you consider the weekend he was in. He had a bad sprint race, he had a bad qualifying. His first lap was very aggressive, but then he got kind of in a little battle with Mark Marquez, with Alex Marquez, and it didn't look good. But he made everything right. He, I mean, yes, he could have qualified on pole and competed with Jorge Martin, but he didn't. So, but from his situation, he was phenomenal. And once again, it proves me right. When the pressure is on, Pecco is there, but when there's no pressure, he fucks it up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And listen, Pecco deserves all the credit in the world for this weekend because, like you said, the weight of the world is on his shoulders at this point. He is the reigning champion, and he's got a contender breathing down his neck at a rate of knots at this point. And he's handled it really, really well this weekend. Like you said, had a bad sprint race, bad qualifying, didn't have the best start to the race, like you said, battling with the Marquezes, but he came back really, really well. I know he got promoted to second because of Brad Binder exceeding track limits again. But listen, at the end of the day, you have to be there to pick up the pieces, and Pecco did. And what Pecco's doing is he's just about keeping pace with Jorge Martin, which is what he needs to be doing. Obviously, he will have to turn the screw from next weekend, or Jorge Martin will run away with it. But Paco did a very good job today. Very mature performance. Was there the whole time. Didn't win it or bin it. And those are very valuable points that he'll have picked up today. He should be very happy with that.
And to the Brad Pinder point, you have to be in striking distance to
Yeah.
collect the points. And also, it's like crashing and finishing a race. You know, you have to be within the rule set. Like, you can't argue, like, yeah, I would have finished first if I didn't crash. Yeah, but you did. Like, the rule in itself is stupid. We had some issues with it in the past, but I mean, we can't get around it, so we might have to deal with it. And Brad Binder, for the third time I can remember this season, because he had it 2 times in Assen. I don't know if he had it in any more races this season, but like everybody is under pressure in this situation. Paco, Jorge, and Brad are under the equal amount of pressure in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And he just got out of place there, and it's his responsibility. It's not like I didn't know this, you know.
No,
And
yeah, you're
to
right.
again, I mean, what do you say? I mean, he had a good race, but to fuck it up in the end and finish third is a little bit underwhelming. But you have to stay within the track limits, and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is. And listen, Brad had a really, really great weekend this weekend, and he had a brilliant race today as well. He kept pace with Jorge Martin. He even overtook him at one point. I think it took him 20 something laps, but he did eventually overtake him. But the rules are the rules. You have to stay within track limits, and you get several warnings as well. If you're still demoted after that, that's on you and nobody else. And I do think it's something that really hurts Brad Binder as well, because it costs him potential podiums and wins sometimes as well. You know, you've got to stay within the limits or you're just going to keep punishing yourself. So Brad had a great weekend. I'm not going to beat on him because he had a very good performance today. But from next season, that's the one area I want to see Brad Binder improve in, staying within track limits, because it seems to hurt him more than it does any other rider on the grid. And I want to see him cut that out in 2024.
Yeah, preferably next race, not only
Preferably
in
next race,
2024.
yeah. But
But I would argue it hurts Jorge Martin more than it does Brad Binder that he made this mistake. Because what if Jorge doesn't win the championship by 4 points?
that's true. That is true. But
This is the 4 points Brad gifted Pecco.
yeah, exactly. That's a very real implication for this title race. It very much is. But Jorge Martin's doing all Jorge Martin can do. You know, he's approaching this with the right mindset that you can't rely on other riders to do you favors. You can only control what you can control. And that's why Jorge Martin's doing so well, because he realizes this. Okay, if Brad Binder stops Pecco getting second, great. If Pecco gets second, we've still cut into the lead and we keep chipping away and we keep chipping away. Thankfully, Jorge Martin is not thinking this way, because that's what leads you into crashing and desperation. Jorge realized you control what you can control. You go out, you win races, and you hope something happens to the other rider. But Jorge's doing this the right way. Yes, Brad let him down, but he still won. So Jorge's done all he can do.
And at the end of the day, there are 3 race weekends left. We go to
6 races.
Malaysia, we go to Qatar, and we go to Valencia with sprint races. So there's no real argument that Jorge was robbed if he doesn't win the championship, because it's his responsibility at the end. There are enough points up for grabs. He should be able to win the championship out of with his own power, with his own strength,
Yeah.
and so he doesn't have to rely on others.
Mm.
But I have to say, I mean, Pecco has, on one hand, a very, very nice ability to turn his weekend around.
Mm-hmm.
Not many riders have this, especially after a terrible, or not a terrible, but a difficult sprint race.
Mm-hmm.
And this is good on one hand, but on the other hand, in with this opponent, and Jorge Martin seems to be good everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
he needs to rely more on his qualifying pace, because if Pecco is on the money, he is on the money with his qualifying pace. He's extraordinarily fast, and he can't afford those races like he had in Indonesia, like he had in Thailand now, where it was a difficult sprint race, and then he kind of recovered with a good start at the beginning.
No, yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think the issue for Pecco, I think something that he'll want to address from next year as well, and certainly in these last 3 races, is not finding himself in that situation where he's in the trenches battling, because that's a big problem for him. You want to be where Jorge Martin is, you know, in the top 3, top 4, qualifying in the front row, every race weekend, giving yourself the best chance. Now, to Pecco's credit, like you said, and it's a great point to mention, Pecco has an uncanny ability to work his way out of those situations, and that's to his credit. But it's not something you want to find yourself in anyway. You want to be at the front. You want to give yourself the easiest job imaginable. But credit to Pecco, he does it very well. But from next season and in these last few races, it is something that he will want to change, no question. By the way, I am so excited for the sprint races in Qatar. That is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, back to the point previously, you want to be in a situation where Jorge Martin is, because in this day and age of MotoGP, it's difficult to overtake. And with the front tire pressure, you really want to control a race from the front. And that's where Pecco's also very, very good. So I think he needs to get his act together there and kind of figure out a way to start better. I've heard that Jorge Martin has like one setup and he's just fast with it
Mm-hmm.
on every track. So I don't know if Pecco has some issues with the setup at the moment, if he has some physical issues, we don't know. And he certainly won't tell me because he blocked me on Instagram. So yeah, but I think Pecco's homework is to figure out how to start a race weekend better because he can't rely on those extraordinary first laps. He
Yeah.
is good in it, yes, but it's not the way to win MotoGP races in 2023. You might get away with it 10 years ago, but not now. So you really have to be in the front row, have to have a good start. And because if you can't overtake, you're stuck in a Fabio situation, and that's unfortunate.
Mm. Yeah, listen, it's a great point to mention that MotoGP is so different to the way it was 10 years ago. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, Valentino Rossi could qualify 6th, 7th, and could still win pretty easily. But A, Pecco Bagnaia is not Valentino, and B, the sport is so different to the way it was. Like you said, with the technology we have on these bikes and with the lack of like slipstream and stuff, it can be much, much more difficult to get past these riders. You have to brake later. You've got to take more chances. And for Pecco, it certainly doesn't help him having a bad start to the weekend, especially when your biggest rivals are basically hitting the ground running straight away. So Pecco's homework, good term to use, is really get these race weekends started better. That's where it lies for him because he'll give himself a much easier task. And we've seen Pecco in the past when he qualifies on pole or the front row and he gets the lead after the first lap. Nobody's better at controlling from the front than Pecco. But you have to be in that position to be in that position. And right now, Jorge Martin's doing it better than anybody.
Yeah. And I briefly mentioned Fabio. Somehow Fabio finished sixth, I believe,
Excellent result.
and 4.5 seconds off the lead, which is incredible when you consider the shitbox he's on.
Yeah.
And he had a good weekend from the start. Like he hit the ground running. And where did he qualify? Let me check. He got into Q2, I believe, right?
I
Yeah,
think he did.
um, I mean, he was in 10th, so not particularly good, but also not very, very bad. I'm sorry. And what do you want to say? I mean, he's on a Yamaha, not necessarily the bike to be on at the moment, and he doesn't seem to be very happy with it. Like his antics towards the media and like the public is very, very discouraging if you're a Yamaha fan,
Mm-hmm.
or like if you are Yamaha. But at the end of the day, Fabio is still a good rider, and he kind of, you saw it on the broadcast, his issues where there was this overtake attempt to Mark Marquez. He got along with Mark Marquez on the straight and then had to kind of brake, or like he didn't get along, but he had a good shot at Mark Marquez out of the first corner.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had to brake so late that he didn't make the apex, and Mark overtook him again. So
Yeah.
it's a fairly easy place to overtake this turn to in Buriram,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like look at Indonesia, like where he had such a beautiful pace there and should have maybe won the race, but didn't because he couldn't overtake, and it's very very frustrating for him. And I really hope Yamaha can figure it out for next season because it's sad to watch, but
Mm.
still very very good weekend from Fabio considering all the circumstances.
Yeah, really good weekend from Fabio. P6 is an excellent result for him. I thought he looked really, really good. I don't know if Yamaha found something for the track or if it was just him. I'm willing to bet it was just Fabio, but you never really know. Yeah, had a great race. I saw a couple of the Marquez overtakes. You know, we know what the Yamaha does well. It turns like absolute silk. It is so smooth on the overtake, but it has no power behind it at all. And I actually saw that Marquez overtake you're talking about where he got back on Fabio, and Fabio had to completely overshoot the apex just to have a chance of staying in the lead. And that's not a good way to live your life if you're a MotoGP rider on that kind of bike. That being said, P6 is an excellent result for Fabio. Again, I still maintain he's arguably the best rider in the world, considering the bike he's on as well. But you made another good point in terms of his interaction with the media and how you should be concerned if you are Yamaha. I'm starting to get Franco Morbidelli vibes from Fabio, where Morbidelli said, do you remember he was asked, do you want to stay in the Yamaha? And he basically said, you'll have to ask Lynn Jarvis that. And I am getting that same energy from Fabio. And time is rapidly running out for Yamaha here, because if they lose Fabio, I don't know what the hell they do.
I mean, Alex Rins is a good rider,
He's
and
not
I'm
Fabio, though.
no, but to your point regarding best rider in the world, I get a feeling that we are talking about Jorge Martin as the best rider at the moment. Like his form at the moment is incredible, and I don't think Fabio would match him on a Ducati, and quite frankly, Paco isn't matching him on a Ducati at the moment. So his pace is incredible.
Mm.
And to the point of the KTM's, I mean, Brad was good, yes, but the other KTM's were dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
What
That
happened
is
to
true.
Jack Miller? What happened to Augusto Fernandez? What happened to Paul Espargaro? I mean, they were all absolutely crazy bad. And
Yeah.
to have your teammate on the podium, if you're Jack Miller, and everybody else is finishing outside the points for whatever reason, it's a bad look. It's a very, very bad look. And I still would have put Pedro on the factory bike.
Yeah, I think there's a very valid argument for that, and that's the point we made when we were discussing this. Look, I mean, I really don't have a reason. I don't know. I can only speculate like everybody else, but to have your other three bikes finishing, what was it, P16, 17, and 18, that's a horrible look. Because Brad Binder's up there doing what Brad Binder does, and everybody else just looks two levels below him. And I didn't see any other KTM rider all weekend apart from Brad Binder. If Brad Binder hadn't been up challenging at the front, I'd have forgotten about KTM entirely. And that's a pretty terrible look for them. They're going to have to get it together next year. Whether it's the riders getting to grips with the bike or whatever the reasoning is, KTM as a group, as an entity, need to be much more competitive next year, because that's a bad look no matter what way you cut it.
Yeah, I remember like in the first laps, I saw a gas going wide in the last corner,
I
but
saw
I
that.
don't know who this one was. It would make sense that it's Augusto Fernandez because Augusto had a good qualifying. He finished in P12, so
Mm-hmm.
still in Q2. But like for Jack Miller, his form recently hasn't been particularly good. He started very well on the KTM,
Mm-hmm.
but somewhere along the line he went wrong, and now he's just the next victim of KTM, I believe. Like only Brad Binder can ride this bike for whatever reason. And I'm not sitting here and telling everybody that Jack Miller is a bad rider. He's exceptional, and his feeling for a motorcycle apparently is second to none. And same with Miguel Oliveira. Miguel Oliveira is a very, very good rider, and for some reason his form has dipped a little bit when you compare it to the beginning of the season. But still very, very complicated to ride the KTM, even though Miguel had like in the wet a step on everybody else, and
Mm-hmm.
usually like 1 or 2 weekends season where he was very good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have a very, very bad feeling about Pedro going to Tech 3 because Pedro is such an amazing talent. He's such a great rider, and he has all the tools to be successful with IO because IO is just exceptional. And
Mm-hmm.
then to go to a team which is notorious for chaos and not being run well in Tech 3, and a KTM, which isn't necessarily the best bike to be on if you're a rookie or if you're a rider in general, because apparently nobody can really ride it
Mm.
except Brad Binder, then I'm a little bit worried, and I hope he proves me and everybody else wrong.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, listen, Pedro Acosta is the prodigy of MotoGP. He is the next big thing, to quote pro wrestling. If you know, you know. But I do get a bad feeling about him on that KTM, and I personally, this is strictly my own opinion. I don't agree with this being MotoGP at any cost mentality. I don't agree with this. I think you're much better off waiting for the right opportunity to come up and then being in MotoGP. Yes, like I think Aprilia are much better run. I think with Honda, okay, yes, that's a crazy sounding idea, but at least you can have the project molded around you for the next 10 years. But KTM's history with rookies is so bad. I mean, they had Raul Fernandez, they threw him out. We know what they did to Remy Gardner, which was disgraceful, quite frankly, the way they treated him. We saw what they're doing now with their riders. I mean, I don't get it. I really, really don't. And I think as much as I love Pedro, and you know how much I'm a big fan of Pedro Acosta, I think Pedro thinks that IO KTM and MotoGP KTM are the same entity, and they're not the same thing. They are not run the same way. And I only hope Pedro knows what he's doing, because if he's wasted on a KTM next year, I don't know what the hell I'll do.
The thing is, you have to ride for IO in Moto 2 and Moto 3 because
Mm.
if you get this opportunity, you would be stupid to not take it. And the other hand is, if you ride for IO, you will get a MotoGP KTM contract basically built in your contract. And it wasn't that Pedro apparently didn't want to go anywhere else. It seems like they had an option in his contract, which they pulled, and he had no choice. So, I mean, we will see in next year. Augusto has made some good progress, but it's still Augusto and not Pedro. So I really, really am excited to see it, but I have a bad feeling about it.
Well, I think you're fairly justified in having that feeling. That's my opinion. Like I said, I only wish the best for Pedro Acosta. I hope he comes in and takes this class by storm. It's just on that bike, I always have a bad feeling about it, and that's just the truth.
Yeah. Regarding Aprilia, I mean, Aleix had a very, very good weekend up until like the race.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, Aprilia seems to be fast, but then during the sprint and during the race, they fall back. And today, again, he had a good starting position, he had a good start, but then just went backwards. So I don't know what's happening to Aprilia at the moment. I thought that maybe a track where you have to preserve your rear tire would be beneficial to Aprilia, especially somebody like Aleix, who has been proven to do this very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is, and that's the only way I can sum up Aprilia as a whole this weekend, actually. I mean, Aleix had a great weekend, like you said, finished pretty well, but they just don't look like they can get near the front now, which is weird. They seem to be in this dip that Aprilia always goes into. We talk about the
Especially
Aprilia,
like in the overseas races.
especially in the overseas races, yes. And we talk about the Aprilia cycle where they look amazing, they win a couple of races, and then they're just in the trenches. I mean, I don't have any explanation for it. I really don't. I have no idea. I mean, I know Maverick Vinales and Miguel Oliveira had technical issues, but I'm kind of at a loss with Aprilia. I really don't know what's going on there.
But that's also weird that Aprilia has a lot of technical issues.
Yeah.
I can't, remember Motegi last year,
Mm-hmm.
where Aleix had a promising weekend, but then couldn't even start the race because of some electronical problem.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's too much. I can't recall Ducatis, for example, having so many technical problems, even though there are twice as many bikes on the grid.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, you know. I don't know if it's build quality. I don't know if it's engineering issues. I genuinely have no idea. But Aprilia just seem to have so many more technical issues than any other manufacturer. It's very, very bizarre.
You know what was also bizarre?
Mm,
Mark and Jean Mir both finished the race.
stunned,
Is it?
absolutely stunned.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first time this season this happened, but I don't know. Maybe India.
In fact, I would bet this is probably the first time it's happened because I did Joan Mir not crash out in India too.
Yes, he crashed in the sprint, but then in the race. But I don't
This
know
might only
where.
be the second time.
Let me check.
I'm actually really curious to know if that's
Yeah,
true or not.
but I believe Mark crashed in India and put the bike back on its wheels and rode it to a P9.
You might be right. Yeah, that's probably what I'm thinking of.
But I don't know. I mean, would be too long to dig it out now, but kind of hilarious. Yeah, but I mean, what else is there to discuss in MotoGP? What was weird that Luca Marini had a good start, and for
Mm.
example, Luca was so good on the brakes, like you couldn't overtake him. But then he was just put it into R for racing mode and went backwards.
Yeah, Luca Marini had a good weekend. Had a phenomenal start off the line. By the way,
And
his
a good
launch.
qualifying.
Yeah, his qualifying as well was brilliant. But even in the main race, his launch off the line, I think it might be the only time I've ever seen somebody launch maybe better than Jorge Martin, which is weird. But Marini just shot straight up into the front. And then, unfortunately, like Luca Marini does, he just started to fall back as the laps went by. But yeah, Mooney VR46, Marini had a great weekend. Bizaki was just about there as well. He did a solid weekend. But yeah, credit to Marini. Started really well, showed a lot of promise.
Yeah, and I have to be a little bit come. I have to come to his defense in one sense. A, he had a good start, but Jorge Martin just shut the door on him.
Yeah.
Like no way somebody else was going into this corner first other than Jorge Martin. And the other thing with his height and his weight, maybe the tire preservation isn't as easy as for somebody like Jorge.
Yeah, very
That
valid.
could be an explanation, but at the end of the day, Rossi was 1 meter and 80 or is 1 meter and 82 centimeters and won 9 world championships. So, but again, different era. So yeah, we don't know, but still could be a factor. Is there like anything else in MotoGP we need to discuss? I mean, Joan Zarco took a shit.
Yeah, Alex Marquez crashed out of
Oh yeah,
P3.
Alex Marquez. What was weird, he was the only one who put the medium rear on,
Mm-hmm.
and his crash was very, very weird because he was in turn three and basically was out of turn three, but then his front tire gave out and he crashed very, very late. So I don't know what the reason was. Maybe his rear tire started to give up and he started to push a little bit more. Or maybe he used up his front tire a lot because the rear tire has more grip, so it's pushing the front tire a little bit more, and then he just lost it. Could be both. I don't know. At the end of the day, you would have to ask him. And I was a little bit busy this afternoon, so I couldn't check on all the interviews and this and that. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know. As of right now, maybe there's already an explanation out, and maybe I just missed it.
Mm-hmm.
But was a weird crash, was an unusual crash.
Yeah, I completely agree. And listen, I saw a brief replay of it, and from what I saw, it looked like what you described. It looked like he went out wide, tried to save the front, and the front was just too far over and gave up on him. Now there might be another reason. Maybe the front tire was worn. But that's what I saw. So that's kind of my explanation of it. I think he just tried to save it like his brother normally does, and it was just a bridge too far for him to save. So it just looked like a standard crash, if I'm honest, but unusual in circumstance, absolutely.
Yeah. And regarding Moto 2, I don't know if there's too much to discuss there. Fermin was just better than everybody else,
Hmm.
and especially better than Pedro, which was
Weird.
Yes, weird in one sense that, in my opinion, Pedro has two strengths. He's extraordinary on the brakes. Nobody
Hmm.
can outbrake him. And he's quite fast on a straight line,
Uh huh.
you know? And a track like Phillip Island, which suits the Boscoscuro a lot, where there's a lot of fast and flowing stuff, and a track like the Red Bull Ring, for example, isn't necessarily their favorite track.
Hmm.
So for Fairman to pull this one off is incredible because, like, theoretically, he shouldn't have won this race because, like, the track doesn't suit the Boscoscuro. The track layout suits Pedro Acosta extraordinarily well. It suits the Kalex more than it does the Boscoscuro. But he just woke up and chose violence. It was crazy how fast he was in qualifying. It was crazy how good he was at the beginning of the race, and then it seemed like he managed to race a little bit. Pedro closed the gap, but then again, he just opened it again. I mean, he made a mistake in the last corner in one lap where Pedro gained a little bit on him. And then there was this brief period where he thought, okay, maybe Pedro can close the gap if Fermin used up all of his tires, but nothing. I mean, he was extraordinary good.
Yeah, he was just untouchable all weekend, and sometimes it gets like that. Sometimes riders are just untouchable all weekend. We've seen it so many times with so many different riders. Like you said, the Boscoscuro generally doesn't suit a track like Thailand, but Fermin Aldegar made it work. And to quote Jake Dixon here, he beat the next great Mark Marquez prodigy. Thankfully, he didn't say that. Thank God, but he was really, really good. He was just great, and that's all really you can say. And you got to give Fermin Aldegar his props because he finished, what was it, like 2.5, 3 seconds ahead of Pedro, which is unbelievable. He looked so, so good, and he deserves all the credit in the world because that was a great ride from Fermin Aldegar.
It's 3.5 seconds, which includes the wheelie he popped at the end.
I mean, that's some top
So
G shit right there.
incredible. But you brought me to my favorite topic of all time, which is Jake Dixon. And I would like to use the remaining time we have to rant about his stupidity. Like, how far was he behind Celestino Vietti? Like 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters? I don't know. It was a lot.
At least 15.
It was a lot. And a rider who aspires to be like a championship contender, who says stuff like, I outsmarted the next Pedro Acosta, and also his interview like after Silverstone where he mauled Darren Binder for an accident which was not even 10% as bad as what he pulled. I mean, you could make a very very good case for um, Jake Dixon and Darren Binder in Silverstone being a racing incident. I still believe Darren Binder had like more fault than Jake Dixon there, but I had a very very interesting discussion with Jacob from Now Moto News about it in
Hmm.
our podcast we did. But like, there is no way in hell this was a racing incident. Celestino Vietti minded his own business in turn two there. He was braking like every normal rider would do, and then Jake Dixon came flying into his rear tire. It was crazy. And when you consider that Jake Dixon, a world championship rider, a Grand Prix winner, somebody who's in the top three of the world championship, couldn't use like those, let's say, 1 or 2 seconds to realize, oh shit, this is going bad. To just go wide, I mean, it's not that difficult. Just go wide and mind your own business. But no, he kept it in and just hit Celestino Vietti full blast. And I'm very, very surprised that Celestino Vietti didn't crash in this corner. I mean, he crashed in the next one, but that's just what he does. And I don't know if this one had any effects on Celestino Vietti crashing afterwards. As I said, I haven't read anything or whatsoever. So we would just have to assume here that not everything was okay for Celestino Vietti. And how fucking stupid is Jack Dixon? I mean, he had those, let's say, 2 seconds to realize, oh no, this is not going well right now. I'm too late on the brakes. You see Celestino Vietti getting bigger, 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 and you said, no, I will hammer it inside. I mean, you just have to move out like a meter and you miss him and everything is fine. And then to have an interview out where you rant over Darren Binder how stupid he is and that he does it to everyone and he needs to be banned is just utterly hilarious because you can just put one on top of the other and have Jack Dixon ranting about himself.
Ah,
It's free memes.
Jake Kamikaze Dixon. I mean, what in the hell are you thinking? It. Oh, I don't even know what to say. I really don't. I mean, the irony of this situation is just so beautiful in a weird way. You know, like you said, you've Celestino Vietti doing his thing, minding his own business. I mean, you've got 15 meters. Celestino Vietti's in front of me. 14 meters, 13 meters, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. And in that 3 or 4 seconds, it doesn't come across Jake Dixon's mind that I might hit this guy. You know, I can't get stopped. He's in front of me. Fuck it, we ball. Let's just crash straight in front of him and hit his rear tire. I mean, I don't even know what to say. What I will say is that Jake Dixon can never complain about Darren Binder again because that was the most stupid thing I think I've ever seen Jake Dixon do. Not the most stupid thing I've ever heard him say. That's a different conversation. But in terms of actions on the track, I mean, that was just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life because you've got the time to stop and go wide and keep your race going. And instead, for some reason, I mean, what did he think he was going to accomplish? What did he think it was going to work? What, you think hitting the rear tire of another rider is going to somehow work for you? I mean, I don't know. There's a criminal absence of brain cells in Jake Dixon's helmet sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, karma was in place today because he crashed badly and Celestino Vietti didn't. And all the blame was on Jake Dixon. So he reaped all the consequences and Celestino Vietti escaped it unfazed. Apparently, maybe it was had something to do with his crash, but we don't know. But like this instance was perfect karma. And I really, really don't understand this man. He's so
Oh,
utterly ridiculous, and he has like a normal human being has like a baseline where it moves up and down a little. Jack Dixon is all over the place. He's up and down every day, and it's crazy, crazy, crazy.
Jake Dixon's brain sometimes is. If you've ever seen The Simpsons, you'll understand this joke. You know that little chimp that plays the cymbals all the time? That's Jake Dixon's brain sometimes. I mean, I don't know what more I can say. It was just utter stupidity of the highest level.
Ban him because
Yeah,
he's stupid.
yeah. If stupidity was a crime, Jake Dixon would be serving a life sentence right now.
On the other hand, Chandra finished third in his home GP. Very, very nice. Then Ai Ogura had a very, very good race when you consider his starting position.
Uh-huh.
And then again, it was like a circuit made for Ai Ogura, made for Chandra. You know, those
Mm-hmm.
guys were good in Austria, those guys were good in Motegi, and it's like the same type of circuit, pretty much. So I think that Ai Ogura never should have been in this position at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but he made a very, very good rescue job, and also Chandra, very, very nice that he finished at home on the podium, and it's just beautiful to see, especially like after last year where he crashed in the lead in the rain.
Yeah, man, brilliant weekend for Honda Team Asia. I mean, they'll be very, very happy with that. Somkya Chantra getting on the podium, absolutely excellent. And then Ayagora, great, great result. Showed a lot of resilience to come back from where he started. And yeah, that's all I can say. Great weekend. Pretty much the opposite of Jake Dixon. Great
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah. And Pedro had also a good weekend. And what's nice, I was thinking about it during the race, like how much does it fuck with your head when you know you could clinch the world championship if this and this and this happens? Like, how much do you think about it? And I think it's something which is not easy to deal with.
Mm.
And I'm very, very happy with his performance. He didn't do anything stupid. I mean, Fermin was just better and he accepted it, didn't fuck it up. And Fermin is no competition for him in the World Championship. So everything is fine for Pedro and he will probably take it in Malaysia. But then again, I think it will be difficult for him to cut out all the noise. But then Aki Ayo should be the right man for the job. But
Yeah.
like Tony Arbolino again is like a severe version of Pecco at the moment. He has bad qualifyings. He isn't good in free practices. But then all of a sudden he has a good start, a good race, but it's not quite enough. Like it's not like Pedro, who's on this Jorge Martin wave at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be fair, the whole season and just hammers out the pace at the front. And today, like, okay, Fairman was better, but same again. Tony Arbolino could never have competed with Pedro today because, like, of the qualifying, you can't expect to qualify. Where did Tony qualify? Like, eighth, probably. That's his favorite qualifying position. But yeah, he qualified in eighth. Nice. He always qualifies in eighth. So very, very difficult to compete for a world championship if you qualify eighth all the time.
Yeah. And listen, like you said, Pedro had a very good weekend this weekend, and that second place is an excellent result. I will touch on briefly before we move on the weight of having championship expectations and knowing you could and probably will win it. If I'm Pedro, I know this sounds like pretty counterintuitive advice. You really have to try not to think about it as much as you can because it is easy to get into your head, I would imagine. And I do think, like you said, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think Aki Ayo is the perfect person to have in that role because he's mentored so many champions by this point. You know, Remy Gardner, Raul Fernandez, who was in that championship race as well. And Aki Ayo will know just keep your composure, take it race by race, and the rest will come to you. So I don't think it'll get to Pedro. I mean, today he didn't show any evidence of thinking about it, so I don't see any evidence that he will from this point on. But great race for him. Tony Arbolino keeps it alive as well. Credit to him. Gets from 8th to 4th and finishes well.
Yeah. Anything else in Moto 2?
Not really. It was a pretty bland race, if I'm honest, but Moto 3 wasn't.
Yeah, Moto 3 was crazy, and I was awake then. Just quick shout out to Isan Guevara. He had a good race, but apart from it, nothing really special there. Yeah, so let's move over to Moto 3. David Alonso, he is a motherfucker. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
more chaotic a race gets, the better David Alonso is. He is incredible. And
Y-
on a track where he's never been, I mean, he won in Silverstone. He won. Where did he win? Misano?
I think it was. Did he win in? He didn't win in Catalonia, did he?
Sure, yeah, I believe. I just remember from Catalonia that
Was it
that
Mugello?
no, no. Wait a second, I will check. I will check.
I know he's won in a few weird tracks.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe he won 4 races.
yeah. Today was the 4th.
He won Catalonia, San Marino, Thailand, and Silverstone. So
Okay, that makes
Catalonia
sense.
and San Marino he raced in.
Mm-hmm.
Catalunya obviously is in every junior series, and in San Marino he did the wild card in 2021, and I'm not sure if it's in any junior GP series as well, because they raced there once, and I believe he had some. Kelso won there, I believe, against Daniel Gado.
I
But
think
yeah,
you're right. I think he
I
did.
don't know. And Thailand and Silverstone new tracks for him, but he is so phenomenal. I mean,
Oh, he's so
very,
good.
very, very, very good. And I mean, it's his rookie season. Same with Colin. It's his rookie season. Imagine how good both of them will get next season, for example. I mean, we could really talk about early season championship favorites in Moto 3 with David Alonso, you know?
Yeah, I mean, listen, this has been the year of the rookie. The rookies have really stepped up and delivered this year, and David Alonso has been incredible. He's been so good. This is his
Yeah.
first year in this championship, and he goes in the most chaotic motorsport class probably in the world. And the more chaotic the race is, the better he gets. And that is a good way to be. That sets you up very well for life in the Premier. It sets you up very well for life in Grand Prix racing as a whole. David Alonso just absolutely fantastic. Nothing more I can say. Colin Vire continues to get better week on week on week. Another podium, absolutely fantastic.
It's his
Tayo
first
for
one.
his
It's not another one. It's his first
Oh,
podium.
sorry, yeah, you're right. Yeah, his first podium looks just continues to get so much better. Tayo Furusato, first podium. I mean, no one does it like Moto 3 does it, do they?
Yeah. I mean, with Furusato, he had always so much promise. I remember in 2021, him winning his first race in the Red Bull Rookies Cup against some serious competition. I mean, Diogo Moreira, David Alonso, and Daniel Gado were racing there. Crazy. He won this like first time ever. He came over from the Asian Talent Cup because he was this good
Mm-hmm.
and just won there immediately. He has all the tools in the world to be successful, and it's good that it finally is coming together for him. He had a good couple of races, and it's important to let young riders develop. You know, we had this conversation a little bit with Joel Kelso and him potentially out of Model 3. Luckily, he secured a seat um, for next year with Bowie,
Mm-hmm.
but you just need to give those young people time, and then they will develop into something very, very special. You know,
Yeah.
and not everybody is Pedro Acosta, not everybody is David Alonso, and quite frankly, not everybody is Daniel Ricciardo. Hello, Peanut. And not everybody is Daniel Ricciardo, but he is just good,
Yeah.
and he will figure it out over time.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you. And I mean, as far as the depth of talent in Moto 3, it is so good. It really, really is. I mean, you talked about Tayo Furusato there a moment ago. To win that competition against that level of competition is no joke because those are some of the best young riders on planet Earth. And to be brought over from the Asia Talent Cup to compete in that competition is unbelievable, and just the level of talent that's been on display in Moto 3 is outstanding.
Yeah, I just checked, and there are so many people who have such great promise. Obviously, Alonso, Fursato, Vea, Masia, Enchi, Olgado, then maybe Kelso if he can get more races like Phillip Island. Diogo Moreira has good potential. Javier Artigas has a lot of potential. Jose
Hmm.
Antonio Rueda. And yeah, now we're getting to the back of the grid where maybe Mario Aggi. I mean, he is very, very tall for the class, and I'm excited to see him in Moto 2 next
Hmm.
season, where he can maybe figure out how to use his body better and figure out how to be faster than if he has faster machinery. Also, somebody like David Munoz, even though he's incredibly stupid, and even though it wasn't his fault today that his gearbox apparently was broken, how could you stay in the middle of the track while everybody else is flying by you? And obviously, Ayumu Sasaki very, very unlucky that he couldn't avoid him. But yeah, very strange with David Munoz. But this class is so talented, and we could definitely look back in 5 years at this Moto 3 grid and see a lot of MotoGP riders.
Yeah, I think you will. And this season is the best evidence of why you will, because we look at a class like Moto 3, and I know we joke about it a lot, but you're looking at a class where on any given weekend, 50% of the grid could win that race, and probably 80% of it could be on the podium. And yes, that's down to the chaotic nature of the class. I completely get that. But it's also down to the talent. You know, there are some really gifted motorcycle riders in that class, and you've just reeled off most of them. And then by the time you got to towards the back of the grid, Mario Agi's there, who's one of the best young riders in the world. So, I mean, Moto 3 is so stacked with talent, and I just think it's a testament to the class, and it's a testament to the talent pipeline system that we have with Moto 3. And realistically, you'll see them bolstering the Premier Class ranks probably over the next decade or more.
Yeah. And for example, somebody like Colin also, I talked with Colin, he is not particularly tiny. I mean, Kelso, he is fucking tiny.
Mm.
He's 160 centimeters, something.
Mm.
But Colin is tall, and I think he will get even better if he goes to Moto 2 someday.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see. Also, I would like to know your opinion on David Munoz and the whole situation, because it was unfortunate, but still, again, David Munoz.
Yeah, I mean, David Munoz has a really bad habit of being at the scene of the crime anytime a crime's committed. And at some point, that stops becoming bad luck and that starts becoming more than that. And look, I think today was definitely more in the accident side of things with Ayumu Sasaki. I don't think it was reckless or intentional, but there does come a point where you have to cut that kind of thing out. And this season, David Munoz has been at the scene of the crime far too many times with metaphorical blood on his hands. And that's just got to be cut out one way or the other, because we used to blame Dennis Antru for that, and he kind of grew up and stopped doing it. David Munoz, if he wants to have a future in this class, he's going to have to go through that same process, because yeah, it's funny joking about it and this kind of thing, but you have to stop being at the scene of accidents, because it's not only going to hold other riders back, it's only going to hold you back too.
Yeah, and it's a little bit sad when you consider he came into the class, finished second in his race in Catalonia. That was like his second race ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was so talented, so gifted, and now you kind of see him fading away a little bit. Not that he's bad, I'm not saying that, but he's not as good as promised, I would say
Yeah.
this. And then when you put on all the accidents, all the stuff he inflicts, and like dangerous riding. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in Indonesia, I remember I was talking with my girlfriend while we were watching the race. Like, David Munoz is kind of quiet, and like 2 seconds later, he rammed into David Alonso. And, you can't get away with it over a long period of time, because we saw it with Marc Marquez. Someday there will be an accident which isn't going to be nice.
Yeah, you're spot on. And listen, we've seen more than enough of them in this class and the other classes to know that that is eventually what's going to happen. And I think the biggest issue David Munoz is having is, I don't think it's a talent issue. I think he's a very good rider. And I think if you're in Moto 3, all right, yes, we know the issues with Moto 3, but generally if you're in if you're in Grand Prix racing, you kind of deserve to be there one way or the other. I think what's happening with David Munoz is that he's trying far, far too hard, and he's trying to overcomplicate it. He's trying to be flash. He's trying to be arrogant, and all it's leading to is crashes and damaged motorcycles. And he's not impressing anybody. All he's doing is pissing everybody off in the paddock, especially in the Moto3 paddock. And I think for David Munoz, especially for next year, he's got to cut that out, and he's got to race on his own ability, and he's got to stop trying to impress people and overdoing it, because it's going to get him nowhere. All it's going to get him is it's going to get him dropped out of the paddock, because nobody wants that kind of thing. We've seen it with Darren Binder a couple of years ago in Moto3. We've seen it with riders in all the classes. If David Munoz wants any advice, stop this now, because it's going to get him nowhere.
I mean, he's fast. He's usually in the top 5 when he
Yeah.
finishes.
And that's the thing, he's a fast rider. It's not like he's constantly languishing around at the back of the grid. He's a quick rider. He can put it all together. But he's just not helping himself, and all he's doing is self-harming himself. So he's really got to cut it out, really is the crux of it.
Yeah. And also, when you look at the Moto3 championship at the moment, it's a little bit funny because Jaume Masia, I'm not saying he is bad at the moment, but he had like a stretch of races where he wasn't particularly
Spectacular.
the top of the class. Yeah, like Indonesia, he was okay. She finished in 6th. Like in Australia, it was very, very difficult, but he finished in 8th, still good. And now in Thailand, he is in 4th after being overtaken by Colin. But still, he is very, very consistent, and that sets him apart because his championship rivals at the moment, look at Ayumu Sasaki. He has 0 points in Indonesia because he fucked it up. Had a good race, 20 points in Australia, but then again, due to bad luck now, I have to be honest, he didn't finish Thailand. Alonso finishes 2nd, didn't finish, finishes 1st. Then Daniel Algado finished 14th, 13th, and now 6th. And to be fair, Daniel Algado had a very difficult task today, and he had incredible pace. But
very good.
This is the but. It's not Pedro Acosta incredible pace where he just keeps going and keeps mauling everybody. It's okay, I'm now in P6, and then he kind of is more or less in this pack and can't go further.
Yeah, I think that's a great point with Danny Holgado. You know, his pace is so good nearly every weekend, but he's almost missing that last gear to properly shoot past everybody else and take home a lot of wins that he could be taking. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if it's maybe an issue with him, an issue with the bike, but
I think it's Tech 3.
I think it's Tech 3?
Yeah, Tech 3 is such a mess. I mean, I've heard stories that Felipe Farioli is incredibly unhappy with the team and how this ship is going. I've heard from riders in Moto3 or Junior that Tech 3 is an absolute mess, even in Moto3. I mean, Remy Gardner has came out publicly and said Tech 3 is an absolute mess in MotoGP. So Daniel Algado is a very, very talented rider, and I'm very, very sad that he can't live up to his potential, because I believe, just my opinion, that the team isn't giving him the proper bike to be successful. And, you know, is it a coincidence that somebody like Jose Antonio Rueda, I talked with Eddie O'Shea last week a lot about Jose, that basically, quick summary, Jose Antonio Rueda had a very, very dominant junior career because he was on the Honda, and he's incredible at carrying corner speed, and he's not particularly the best one when it comes to racecraft and race IQ, but his pace is extraordinary, and the KTM isn't necessarily the bike for him because he needs more like Honda, because the KTM is more a stop and go bike, where the Honda is more like a flowing bike, which takes a lot of corner speed. And Eddie basically said that Rueda is incredible talented, and he is incredibly good at taking the Honda and maximizing out of it, but he's struggling with the KTM a little bit. But still, he finished every race, when I remember correctly. Jose Antonio Rueda, there were races, for example, like Australia or Thailand, where he collected 0 points. Okay, shit happens. But I can't recall him crashing. And this is, I believe, something which gives Aki Ayo with him on the way, where it's better for a young rider to do it the Jose Antonio Reda way than this up and down shit like Daniel Algado is doing. And I think this is part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, it says it all, really, doesn't it? If other people are saying it, it's got to be true somewhere.
Yeah. And regarding this, I mean, again, something which was discussed with Eddie last week. Apparently, Angel Piqueras is a motherfucker when it comes to race IQ. I mean, he like racecraft this chaotic situation in Moto 3. He thrives on it, and Eddie is under the impression that he will be very, very, very good next season on the Leopard Honda again.
I'm very excited to hear it. You know, again, there's no smoke without fire in Moto 3. If people like that are saying he's this good, he's gonna be this good. And I'm really
Yeah,
excited, especially with a setup like Leopard, who historically have had very good success in Moto 3. I'm all here for it.
yeah. I mean, I still think Jaume Masia at the moment is the complete package because he doesn't have this up and down shit. But Moto 3 is such a wild class that 17 points is nothing.
Oh, it is nothing. You're absolutely right. And look, I think Moto 3 might be the only class I can think of where you're actually suited better to being a momentum rider than a consistent rider. Because in Moto 3, a championship can change in the space of a few laps. Never mind a few weekends. Moto 3 can literally change on a dime. And Jaume Masia, that's kind of his biggest blessing and his biggest curse is that he is consistent, but sometimes in this class you have to be more than that. You have to be spectacular.
But he's only consistent since this season. I mean, last season he had always this, or the previous seasons, he had always this up and down thing. And even this season, he had this stretch in Silverstone and in Austria where he had 0 points. And it seemed like the championship was lost there. But he had a very, very good recovery then, winning 2 races and finishing on podium in 2 races, and now is consistent enough to keep the championship in his side.
Um, it's a very tough one to answer because again with Moto 3, there's literally no way of predict. Like for all we know, Mario Aggi could win the Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. You literally don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the safest money is on Jaume Masia because consistency you can at least bank on, but it's just a question of whether consistency is going to be enough because somebody could be spectacular, nab 2 or 3 wins, and that's it over for Jaume Masia. So if I was betting my own money, I'd bet it on Jaume Masia, but there's no way of really knowing.
Yeah. And I would like to quickly move to World Superbike because Remy had an incredible race.
Oh,
And like yesterday was very unfortunate. The crash looked bad, and I hope he's okay. Like the team came out and said he's okay. On his Instagram post, he said something that he's injured, so we don't know how fit he really is. But it looked bad. But it's nice to see him finally getting to grips with the Yamaha and being like in the top 5. He had a good qualifying. He had good qualifying in Portimao as well. And things are starting to come together, which is very nice. And I'm very happy for him that he finally gets it. And also, like the last laps between Alvaro Bautista and Toprak were just incredible. And like we had a very very interesting Moto GP race, but what those guys did today was far superior when it came to entertainment. I mean, I just caught the last 5 or 7 laps, but still amazing racing. And yeah, I would like MotoGP to move more towards the direction of World Superbike when it comes to aerodynamics and rider devices and like tone it down a little bit because it's getting ridiculous in the moment in MotoGP. And I would like World Superbike to move more towards British Superbike because just have the best Superbike riders in the world on the most savage motorcycles without those stupid electronics and just let it rip.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree. I mean, you want riders like Tommy Bridewell who win by half a point by the end of the season. I mean, you can't write better drama than that. And as far as World Superbike today goes, I mean, I don't watch as much World Superbike as I should. I'll hold my hands up on that. But God Almighty, what a race today was. What a way to sign off a season. 32 thousandths of a second between Toprak and Alvaro Batista for the race win. Domi Gardner with a podium. Brilliant from him. Our boy Remy Gardner in P4 just watching everything happen in front of him. Brilliant result. I mean, I gotta say, World Superbike was so good today. Those last 3 laps were some of the best racing I've seen in any class all season. And overall, I am just phenomenally impressed. I really am. We've got Jonathan Ray going to Yamaha next year, Toprak going to BMW. Maybe does he end up in MotoGP sometime? I don't know. I'd like to see it. But either way, phenomenally impressed.
Yeah. And Domi Egeta is the luckiest bastard alive. Because, let me elaborate, he had a technical issue in race 1, then starts from P2 again in the Super Pole race. Then had a technical issue again. His engine blows up. Session red flag because of oil. Then, because of a rule that if it's happening in the first 3 laps, I believe, then you can go back to your original starting position. And he was allowed to go back to the grid. Had a good Super Pole race, finished in second again, and made all the right calls in race 2 and finished on the podium. Incredible. I mean, if it wasn't for this rule and the spare bike Yamaha had for him, then he would never be able to finish on the podium. But that's like the crazy stories the sports ride, and it's very entertaining. It's very funny when you think about it, and I'm all here for it. I'm very excited. It's a little bit sad that the season is over, but now we have to concentrate on MotoGP. I'm very excited on how the whole championship battle will play out, and honestly, that's all from me. I don't know if you have anything left to discuss.
All I'm going to say is Domi Agardner is playing 4D chess in the World
Yeah.
Superbike Championship. This man knows what he's doing. Don't lie. He knew what the rules were. He knew what time it was, and he did it anyway. Domi Agardner is like the Chael Sonnen of the World Superbike, and I'm all here for it. Just complete technical shithousery, and I love him for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We have a 2-week break. Thank you, Keelan, for joining me, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. See you on the other side of the break.